So hey guys, in today's lecture, we'll be dealing with the structural classification of morphemes into roots and stems. And before moving on to that, we'll look into the classification of morphemes as roots and affixes. Now, if you take any language, words are classified as roots and affixes. The roots or the root or the base constitute the core or nucleus of the word, and it carries the semantic load. So the core or nucleus of the word would carry the semantic load, which means that it would carry the meaning, whereas the affix on the other hand is a bound morpheme which is attached to a morpheme or a combination of morphemes. Now, an affix is a grammatical category. It can change the class of the word. For example, if it is a noun, you can change it into an adjective. And if it is an adjective or a verb, you can change it into a noun. So, affixes are grammatical categories. It can change the grammatical function of the word, whereas the core or nucleus will always be a lexical category. And it carries the semantic load, principal semantic load, or it carries the meaning. Now, when all the affixes are removed, what remains is the root or the base. So, when you remove all the affixes from a word, what remains is the root or the base. Now, let's take a look at it with the help of an example. So, illustrated the idea further using this diagram. Morphemes are classified into two: roots or base and affixes. So, roots or base and affixes. Now, roots form the core or nucleus of the word, and affixes are always bound to the root, or you can say that an affix is always bound to a morpheme or a group of morphemes. Now the root or base are further known as centers because they form the center of the construction of words. So, they take the central part in the construction of the word. Since they form the center in the construction of the word, the major important part, roots or bases are also called centers. Now, affixes are also known as subsidiaries to the root. So, since affixes are always attached to the core or nucleus, affixes are also known as subsidiaries to the root. I hope that it was clear. Now, we shall illustrate this with the help of some examples. Now, let's take the word friendship. In friendship, friend is the root word and ship forms the affix. Since the affix comes after the root word friend, it is also known as a suffix. Since it succeeds the root words, it is also known as a suffix. Now, another example would be unkindly. So, in the word unkindly, there are three morphemes: un, kind, and ly. Un, which comes as a prefix, it is an affix, it comes as a prefix. Then you have the root word kind, which carries the semantic load. Kind is again a noun, it is an abstract noun. Now, kind is an abstract noun which means affectionate or loving. So, the meaning of the noun is affectionate or loving. And when you add ly to it, it becomes kindly. It is an adjective when you say that he was a quiet and kindly man. But when you say that, never mind, she said kindly, then it is an adverb. So, when you add ly to it, it becomes, depending upon the context, it may become an adverb or an adjective. But when you say unkindly, it was unkindly of him, then it is an adjective. Unkindly or unkindly, he showed the plate to the beggar's arms. So, there is again, when you use it in that context, it is an adjective. So, un is again used to negate kind. Okay, kind has a positive connotation, and in order to make it negative, you use un as a prefix. So, unkindly has three morphemes: un, kind, and ly, where un is an affix, kind is a core or nucleus of the word, and ly is again an affix. Now, consider the word teachers. in the word teachers, there are three morphemes. You might be confused. But in the word teachers, there are three morphemes. Let's take a look at it. The word teachers has three morphemes. Teach, er and s. Now, teach is a verb. When you add er to it, teacher, it becomes a noun. That is the name of a profession. So, a person who instructs is called a teacher. So, it is the name of a profession. Hence, when you add er to it, it becomes a noun. When you add s to it, it indicates plurality. There is no one teacher, there are more teachers. So, if you use s to indicate plurality. So, there are three morphemes, teach, er and s, where teach forms the core or nucleus of the word. It is a verb. Then you have er and you have s. Er is used to change the class from verb to a noun, and s is used to indicate plurality. It also has a grammatical function, and both these are affixes. I hope that it was clear. Now let's take the word anti-establishmentarianism. Now, anti-establishmentarianism can be considered as a long word, and it has many morphemes. Now let's take a look at each of those morphemes. So the word anti-establishmentarianism has got 6 morphemes. They are anti, establish, ment, airy, and ism. Now anti is used as, again, to change the sentence into a negative. The core or root word here is establish. Establish is a verb. Then when you add ment to it, establishment, it becomes a noun. Establishmentary, anti-establishmentary. Then when you say anti-establishmentary, like parliamentary is an adjective. Anti-establishmentarian is the name of a person when you use it like that. So anti-establishmentarian would be again a noun. Anti-establishmentarianism is again a noun. So this is on the whole a noun, but the only root word here is establish. All the other morphemes are attached to the subsequent affixes. So each of these affixes are, when you take this ism as an example, it is attached to a group of affixes or a cluster of affixes. So hence, we can say that it is a word which has 6 morphemes. It's considered to be one among the largest words in English. Now moving on to the concept of the stem, a form to which an affix is attached is called a stem. Quite often, a stem can contain more than a single morpheme. A stem may consist of another stem and affix, and this stem may consist of yet another stem and affix, and so on. So a form to which an affix is attached is called a stem. So once you attach an affix to a form, to a structure, then it becomes a stem. Now, a stem can contain more than a single phoneme. A stem may consist of another stem and affix, and this stem may again consist of another stem and affix, and so on. So n number of affixes can be added to a stem, or a stem can get itself attached to a larger cluster of affixes. Now let's take an example. Now consider the word friendships. So friendships is a word, and it has got a stem, which is friendship. Now, friend is the core or the nucleus, but friendship is a stem. Since S is attached to it, it becomes a stem. So, is that clear? Now, you might be having a slight confusion regarding it. So, we shall move back to our initial word, friendship. So, in the word friendship, as I said, there is a core friend and then there is ship. But this friend, since ship is attached to it, this friend is a stem. Is that clear? So, the form to which an affix is attached to is called a stem. Thus, in the word friendship, friend is the stem and ship is the affix. Now similarly, in the word unkind, kind is the stem and un is the affix. Now quite often a stem consists of more than a single morpheme. The stem may consist of another stem and affix. Okay, a stem need not be just one morpheme. A stem may consist of another stem and an affix. So let me illustrate it with an example. Now the word friendships is such a word. In friendships, there is friend is a stem, and since ship is attached to friend, friend becomes a stem. Now friendship is again a stem. And to that stem called friendship, we attach S and it becomes friendships. So a stem may not be just a single morpheme. A stem can be a combination of two stems too. And it can be a combination of a core word and another stem too. So now the stem friendship consists of the stem friend and ship. And the stem friend cannot be divided further. Now, in the case of friendship, if it is not friendships and if it's just friendship, friendship consists of the stem friend and ship. Now, friend cannot be divided any further. When a stem cannot be divided further, it becomes a root. Is that clear? When a stem cannot be divided further, it becomes a root. So, in some words with single affixes, the stem will also be the root or the base. So, if it is just a single affix, if there is only a single affix, like in the case of friendship, if there is only a single affix, the stem word friend can also be a root or a base. I hope that it was clear. Now, on the basis of structure, stems may be classified into simple stem and derived stem. So, a simple stem consists of a single morpheme. Example would be boy, girl, give, etc. So, these are all single morphemes and these are all simple stems. A simple stem consists of a single morpheme. Now, a derived stem consists of more than one morpheme. So, if a stem consists of more than one morpheme, then it is a derived stem. Example would be boyish, girlish and singer. So, in boyish, there are two morphemes, boy and ish. In girlish, there are two morphemes, girl and ish. In singer, there are two morphemes, sing and So, to these stems, another affix can be attached, like boyishly or girlishly. When you indicate the characteristic trait of a person or the way in which someone behaved, you could say that it was childish of him. He behaved girlishly, like that. Now, singer, again, you can attach another morpheme to it, like the plural s, singers. It would become singers. So, more morphemes can be attached to the derived stems. Derived stems consist of more than one morpheme to which another affix can be attached. Such info can be illustrated using diagrams too. Now let's take a look at it. The morphemic structure of a word can be illustrated using diagrams. And such diagrams are often used in morphological analysis. For example, let's take the word unknowingly. So, in the beginning, you have the word unknowingly. Now, unknowingly is divided into affix and a stem. Affix here is un and the stem here is knowingly. Since ing and ly are attached to it, it becomes a stem. It is not a core or a nucleus. Now, knowingly can again be divided into two. That is a stem, again a stem and an affix. Now, which is the stem in knowingly? Knowing is the stem in knowingly and affix is ly. Now, knowing can again be classified into two. That is, again, there is a stem and an affix. Now you can see it. So, there is a stem and an affix. Now, what are they? The stem would be know and the affix would be ing. Now, at this point, you know that no is the final nucleus of the core which cannot be divided further, and if all the other stems are detached from it, it becomes a core or nucleus. What exists in the end is just the core or nucleus of the word. So, no is the core or nucleus of the word. No is again a verb. So, I hope that it was clear. Now, let's take a look at another concept, which is that of stem formative. There are certain affixes in some languages whose function is primarily to form stems, and such have little meaning other than their linguistic function. Such affixes may be called stem formatives. So, stem formatives in the ega function എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് അത് മറ്റൊരു സ്റ്റെമ്മിനെ ഫോം ചെയ്യാൻ ഹെൽപ്പ് ചെയ്യുന്നു എന്ന് മാത്രമാണ്. There are certain affixes in languages whose function is primarily to form stems, and such have little meaning other than their linguistic function. So, their linguistic function is to form a new stem. Other than that, they don't have a meaning. Okay, their sole aim and purpose is to form stems, to help in aiding forming stems. So, such affixes may be called stem formatives. So, let's take a look at it with the help of examples. Now, let's take the Greek word thermos. So, the Greek word thermos has a root, a stem formative, and an affix. Now, will you be able to identify what they are? Now, let's take a look at it. The Greek word thermos consists of a root, which is therm, a stem formative, which is O, which is denoted by hyphen O hyphen, and then there is an affix, which is S. Now, this S cannot be directly attached to the root word without the stem formative. Without the stem formative, the affix cannot be directly attached to the root word, and hence therm means again it has got something to do with temperature, right? Thermos means warm or hot. Therm means something which has to do with temperature. The root meaning of therm is heat. When you add O and S to it, it becomes hot or warm. So, heat becomes hot or warm. That is the difference there. Now, there are not much stem formatives in English, save for some stem formatives that can be seen in words which are derived from Greek. So, in the words which are derived from Greek, we still retain stem formatives. An example would be thermometer, an instrument used for measuring heat and temperature. Now, thermometer has got the root word, which is therm, then you have the stem formative O, and then you have the affix, which is meter. That is, meter is used to measure something. It's a measure. It's a unit measure. So, you have thermometer, where you have the root word them, then you have the stem formative O, and then you have meter. So, this is one of those examples that you can quote. And this word comes from Greek, hence it has got a stem formative. All the sciences that we learned so far concerning linguistics, like phonology, morphology, all these words do have stem formatives like O. Phono. So, phone, there is the root word. O is the stem formative, and logy, which means the study of, is again an affix. Like morphology, morph is the root word, O is the stem formative, and logy is the affix. So, I hope that it was clear. I hope the concept of stem formative was clear. Once again, moving on to the definition of stem formatives, just to make it clear, there are certain affixes in some languages whose function is primarily to form stems, and such have little meaning other than their linguistic function. So, other than attaching the stem, or other than helping the word in attaching the stem, these words does not have a meaning of their own. So, there are certain affixes in some languages whose function is primarily to form stems, and such have little meaning other than their linguistic function. Such affixes may be called stem formatives. I hope that it was clear. Now, let's move on to a short topic with which we come to an end of this lecture, which is classification of affixes. Affixes are bound morphemes attached to the stem, which may be a root or a base. So by now you might know what an affix is. So affixes are bound morphemes attached to stem, which may be a root or base, or a larger unit containing a root plus one or more affixes. So it can either attach itself to a root or base, or it can attach itself to a larger unit containing the root or base plus one or two affixes. Like we saw in anti-establishmentarianism, where the root word was established and all the other affixes were attached to the root word and the other affixes. So based on their position with regard to the stem, affixes may be classified as prefixes, suffixes and infixes. An affix which is attached to the beginning of the stem is called a prefix, like the word itself indicates. Prefix itself is a prefix. An affix that is attached to the end of the stem is called a suffix. That is when a morpheme succeeds a stem. That is not precedes a stem, but when a morpheme succeeds a stem or a root word, it becomes a suffix. Infixes are attached to the middle of the stem and is uncommon in English. It is not that common. It is only there in colloquial expressions. Now we shall look at it one by one in detail with the help of examples. Now let's take a look at the word unhappy. Now unhappy has got a prefix and a stem or a root. In this case, since nothing else is attached to happy, it becomes a stem as well as a root. Now the prefix is un and the stem or the root is happy. Now let's take another example. The word unfaithful can be morphologically represented as follows. You have a prefix and a stem. The prefix here is un and the stem is faithful. It is a stem. Full is attached to it. So again, faithful again has a stem and a suffix. Now what is the stem in faithful? Faith is the stem in faithful and the suffix is ful, full. Is that clear? So here faith becomes the core or nucleus and all the others are affixes. Now un is a prefix and full is a suffix. I hope that it was clear. Now we shall move on to an example of an infix. Now infixes are highly uncommon in English and they are only there in colloquial expressions. An example would be fan-bloody-tastic or fan-bloody-tastic as said by Eliza Doolittle in again My Fair Lady. So it is a colloquialism. Now unlike the prefixes and suffixes which are indicated by hyphens, an infix is often indicated by an angular bracket like fan-bloody-tastic, where bloody is the infix, which since it comes in between and it is placed in the middle position of the word, and fantastic again, you cannot differentiate between the root and the infix here, and hence we use an angular bracket to represent the infix. So here the infix is bloody, fan-bloody-tastic. Is that clear? So unlike the prefixes and suffixes, there is no hyphen to indicate. We don't use hyphen to indicate infixes. Is that clear? So, infixes appear only in colloquial expressions like fan-bloody-tastic, etc. You can come up with examples for infixes at the end of this lectures. Mostly they appear as colloquialism. So, try to find it out and write it down as a mini assignment. Thank you. So with the word fan-bloody-tastic, we come to an end of this lecture. Thank you for listening and try to find out other infixes as well. Thank you.